Welcome to the StartHer podcast, dedicated to sharing stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I'm your host, Elizabeth Godey, and I'm here to fan the flame of your entrepreneurial spirit. Each week, we bring to you inspiring stories of women trailblazers from around the world who have sparked change in their industries, powered their ideas into thriving businesses, and pioneered their way to success. So, whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a startup enthusiast, or a seasoned leader, join us as we delve into the journeys of these incredible women whose tales will surely ignite the spark in each one of us. My guest today is Dana Corey. She is a business strategist at Dana Corey Coaching, where she works with established entrepreneurs whose businesses serve local to them clients, helping them grow from from being self-employed to owning their role as CEO. Her clients stop micromanaging and become the creative visionary growth leader their business needs. Dana combines a nuts and bolts strategy, internal operating systems, and neuro rewiring, and walk beside you partnerships. Over 87% of Dana's clients double their bottom line within a year of working with her. Even better, they do that while working on a third less hours, taking regular weekends, and enjoying real vacations. Some people think the time off is a side benefit, and Dana believes that freedom is the whole point. Over the last decade, Dana has helped hundreds of business owners enjoy more freedom, make more money, and be great leaders on their own terms. Welcome, Dana. I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. This is great.
Well, so Dana, you and I met, what has it been? In May, I think.
Yep, at an event.
Yeah, we did. And it was one of the best side benefits of that trip was having the opportunity to meet you. And so with the fact that you work with a lot of entrepreneurs in your business, I of course stumbled through the introduction today. I apologize for that. My mind was working faster than my mouth was today. But even though I gave that introduction, can you walk us through a little bit more in detail about what you offer to your clients?
Sure. I work with people who have been. Are you hearing a reverb?
I am.
It's really weird. We weren't hearing it a second ago. Okay, it went away. It's very odd. Okay, so I work with people who have been in business for a while. They've gotten through the startup phase, like the real, up all night, just doing it all. And they get to this point where they have clients, they're making money, things are happening, and they want to grow. They're like ready to really get bigger. And all of a sudden, the rules of the game kind of change. And they find that they are the bottleneck to growth because everything has to go through them. And they don't know how to change it. They try different things, but it doesn't really work. So I come in and I really help them figure out how to go from micromanaging to being the conductor, to being the orchestrator of their business, being the going from being self-employed boss to actually being a CEO and leading a team, leading a company to that growth that they're looking for. That's really what I do.
Yeah, and you and I are, I know we spoke about this when we met before. We're completely in lockstep and aligned on that. I mean, the more that you try to do everything yourself, the more that you're only getting paid for the hours that you work. And so you and I are certainly singing the same tune from that perspective. When you think about starting your company, where did you come up with the idea that this is what you wanted to focus on? Was there a particular incident that happened, or was it a natural progression? How did you decide to focus your energies here?
Well, when I started this, before I was a coach, before I did this business, I sold sex toys for 10 years at home parties. And it was great because it was my own business, except that it wasn't really, right? It was a direct sales company. So I had a lot of the background done. When I was done with that, I was kind of floundering, not really sure what I was doing. And an acquaintance, a friend, I never know what to call people anymore. Anyway, was a business coach specifically for people in the direct sales industry. And she reached out to me and she said, I can see you're trying to figure out what to do next. So before you make any decisions, let me just say that me and she named about 5 other people were like, we're waiting for you to hang your shingle as a coach because you're one of the best we've ever seen. And I was like, that's awesome. Thank you. And how do you make money doing that? I don't know how to make money. I only know how to do sales. I don't know how to make money doing coaching. And so she taught me. And at the moment, because I had this long history in selling sex toys and in relationships, I started off as a relationship and thought there would be less competition, which is not true. And but what I found was that in the first 6 months, all of my clients were business owners. And we talk about relationships, but then when we talked about business, it was really sexy. I mean, I love business and it was so sexy. And it was really fun. And so I transitioned from being a relationship, like romance relationships coach, to then talking about relationships and business and how relationships are the foundation of business, to then really transitioning and focusing completely on business. Although, I bring relationships are such a big part of how I work with my clients and how I teach them. And so it's still a part of me, but yes, it was a complete transition.
We're definitely talking about the sex toys as part of this conversation. I'm gonna get there in a minute, but I had totally forgotten that piece till you brought it up. So do you find that your clients are all women because of the well, I guess that's the first question. Are they all women?
They are not all women. They're 95% women. Mostly because those are the people I hang out with, right? So
yeah, exactly. And do you also feel like from the high relationship investment that you make in people, do you find that also attracts more women, or is it more so just really sort of your network that you find drives that?
I think it's really more my network. I spent so many years working in women-centered, female-centered business. The sex toy industry is really centered around women. And so I spent 10 years developing a whole circle. So those were my people. I really enjoy working with men too, but it's a completely different ball game. Mm. Men understand relationships, but from a different place. And right. And so even though most of what I do, so much of what I do is related to relationships, how women interpret, like how women bring that forth into the world is just a really different way of being than how men bring it forth in the world.
Do you find that I completely concur and agree with that as well. Do you find that working with women, though, that there are different I don't know exactly how to phrase this question, but different issues that they're facing? Like, do women sort of all face the same types of issues and men face the same types of issues? Or
I hate to be that general, right? Like that's a really generalized question, all women, all men.
Sure.
But I will say that for women, what often gets in the way between them and relationships or business is they give their power away in ways that men don't. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes they don't even know that they're giving their power away. They have much less practice in terms of boundaries and what boundaries mean and how to hold on to boundaries. And I don't think, there's the positive and the negative on that, right? It's not all bad. It comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of of caring and wanting to take care of people. that is not always the best way to walk in to create a successful business.
Yeah, I agree. And if you were to sort of break down and distill what you mean by give power away, can you give a specific example of what that would look like?
Yeah. They don't. So a lot of times, here's an example. A woman business owner will make a decision, but then she'll second guess herself
Mm.
and, take in too many ideas or advice or thoughts from people around her and not stick to what she knows is right for her. Um, bet Another one is bending over backwards to make everybody happy, and the person who is then left out is her. I see actually a lot of this sometimes in relationship with team where they'll
Mm.
hire somebody. Hiring is one of the hardest parts of
It
growing.
is.
It's really hard. Not only finding the right person, but then learning how to delegate and trust that they can do the job, or trust that they can do the job better than you can do the job. I mean, right. It's hard, but a lot of times, how I explain what happens at first is a woman will hire somebody to fill a particular role. The new person is in that role for a while, and it's clear that if the role was square, the person's ability is a circle, right?
Right.
And what gets left out of the corners, right? You put the circle in the square, and the corners are empty. So there are parts of the job that aren't getting done. But instead of addressing it, instead of having like getting together with the person and pointing it out and having review and right all of that, she doesn't want to rock the boat. And so she'll take on the corners.
Right. So
And
true.
that is really a great example of women giving their power away.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And do you find as well with this sort of taking on the corners, right? And sort of adding that to the already full basket, do you find that women also have a hard time charging or defining what their value is?
Yes, and so I have a really hard time with this statement defining your value or charging what you're worth,
Mm.
because we're all human beings. We have infinity value. So when we right, so when somebody says to you, charge what you're worth, well, that makes no sense. It makes no sense. So pricing is all about charging the value of the work that you do or the results that you produce, or the product, the value of the product that you sell, for the person who is purchasing that product or that service, right? It correlates to the perceived value of the recipient.
I, I
Rather,
I agree with that. I guess my question is this. So we know that there is still a pay gap that happens. I mean, women are still paid far less than what men are. And I'm sure that you and I could compare a lot of notes, knowing where we are in our careers of probably those experiences we've had ourselves directly. My favorite was the fact that, I didn't have to support a family. The So when you sort of look at it, the fact that pay gap exists, and then you look at sort of the mindset of when women start companies. And I'm happy to say that I think it's changing. The industry is changing. But when you think about even 10 to 15 years ago, it was this idea of a side hustle. It was this idea of being able to pay for the family to go on vacation, or being able to sort of supplement things in their life, and not necessarily building it as a business that would be structured in the same way that a man would think about how they would structure their business.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm really trying to get at is what you see from your clients as far as when they're actually building out their services and building out sort of how their company is, and you're working with a man versus a woman. Do you find that there's a different mindset that goes into play with how a woman approaches what she's going to charge or what the value is going to be versus how a man builds out? And again, these are just generalizations, but I think that there is a reason why these gaps exist in the industry.
Totally. And yes, absolutely. So women there's two things. One is we don't think big enough. We don't consider really that that people are going to accept our offers, or in the case of like my daughter who has a job, right, in her negotiation, she's a millennial. Her attitude towards negotiation and negotiating a salary is really different than my peers were, right? She's not afraid to just ask for it because she figures if they say no, there's always another. It's just negotiating. Right. But most women don't have that. They have a fear attached to it, and it's personal. So that if they're going to ask for something, they're going to ask for an amount or a price, and somebody's going to say no, then that's attached to them like it's a personal affront, right? Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I don't know whether I don't have enough experience with enough men. So like men are 5% of my business. So yes. And there's so much variation in terms of people, but women don't know women business owners have never been taught how to calculate whether or not when they're asking for a price, when they're pricing something, it actually covers the cost, the profit margin, what a profit margin is for, and then they feel guilty for getting profit, which is, excuse me, the whole point. Or not the whole point, but definitely, like, part of the point. And so that creates a gap, the not knowing. It's not that they don't want to, it's just that they don't know how to do it. They don't know what to take into account.
Right.
So that, coupled with this taking it personally, keeps women's requests small. And so they get paid small.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting point that you bring up about this profit guilt is what I'm going to call it, which is so fascinating. And I think also you had brought up just a few minutes ago too about the aspirations, right, of like building something big. It's I was talking to somebody recently, and it's of course not the first time I've heard it, but recently it was brought up. It's every man grows up and thinks he can be president. And then you have women who are agonizing over the fact that they have to be overqualified for a job before they apply for it. It's a really interesting dichotomy there.
So women have a perfectionism issue where they feel like they can't go for something unless they're perfect in all the areas.
Mm-hmm.
And men don't have that.
Yeah. It's true. I think our egos are just centered very differently, is how I would define it. So, ducking back a little bit into sort of like one of the foundational areas of where you started your business, which is in sex toys. My first question is, how did you end up there?
So when I was 27, I'm 63 now, so that was a long time ago. When I was 27 and living in New York and had a bunch of jobs, I had decided and made a promise to myself that I was never going to work for somebody else ever again. And then I proceeded to get pregnant and had kids. And so for 10 years, I was being a mom and homeschooling, and then we moved across the country. And I really needed to get out of the house. I love my kids, and I was committed to homeschooling them, but I needed to get out of the house. And so I actually ended up starting with Pampered Chef, which is a cooking company. And I did that for a little extra money to have a few vacations. Not right? Just like what you said. Like that's what started it. And then I found myself in a situation where I was getting a divorce with 3 kids. And I had met a new man and who's now my husband. And, the amount of money I was making at Pampered Chef was not going to cut it. And so he said, you have to get a real job. And I said, well, give me 6 months. If I can't figure something out about business, I will go find a real job. And at that same week, somebody invited me to a sex toy party. And I was like, oh my God, people make money talking about sex and teaching people how to have better relationships. This is amazing. This is right up my alley. And so I said, okay, let's see what happens. And within 3 weeks, I had tripled my income. And I went on for 10 years. It was amazing. I built a huge nationwide team, the top in sales and top in recruiting for many years in a row nationwide. And I had this team of really professional women. Like I got into it because the woman who presented at the party that I went to was like the girl next door. Right? Like she blonde hair and a ponytail, just like totally normal. No, nothing, I don't know, like it wasn't seedy at all. And so I was like, oh, well, I can make this money. I can talk about sex, which is so much fun. And I can really help people in their relationships. And, it's really empowering. And so that's how I got into it. I just ended up getting bored talking about vibrators every day for 10 years. And I needed a new challenge.
Yeah, I love it. What do you think, looking back in your long career, what do you think has been the biggest surprise to you about and it could have happened at any point in time, but what do you think has been the biggest surprise to you?
I think I had a sense, but I didn't really understand that business, when we choose to be business owners, what we're actually choosing is a lifelong personal development journey. I had a sense, but I just didn't really understand how much and how important it was going to be to keep confronting my own foibles, my own limiting beliefs, my own fear. And that's true for my clients too, right? Like I often say that, every being chooses a pathway in life. And for some reason, business ownership, like people gravitate to business ownership who are willing to consistently push down their own barriers. And that's what keeps it exciting. It's also what keeps it really hard, and then you have these really high highs and these really low lows, and you can have these amazing breakthroughs. But I think that was really the thing that was the most always been the most surprising to me, is how consistently, even after all these years and after as successful as I've been, I still come up against a wall. I'm a human being. I get triggered just like everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's a really honest answer, right? We can all build these fairy tale lands, but there's the reality too of just day to day, and there are a lot of obstacles that we create for ourselves as well. So when you're also looking back and thinking about, again, this long career, what do you think you've been the most proud of?
Oh my God, my clients. I can't tell you. I mean, my accomplishments are great, and they're fun, and I like making money, and I like that part. But the thing that really lights me up is when a client will text me and say, "I did it! I got to this goal," or I did this thing for the first time, and I'm just like so proud. And I feel so honored to have been allowed to be such an integral part of the growth of so many of my clients. That they allow me to come in and just really get into the dirt with them, and so that when they succeed, it really it just gives me such joy. So that's
Yeah, I love that. And you can feel the authenticity in that as well. Uh, do you have a team?
I have a team, but I don't have employees.
Yeah.
So it's really one of the conundrums of my business is I teach business owners how to scale their businesses, but I'm in a business that I became really clear about very early on that was never going to scale. People hire me for my brain, and I just can't replicate my brain. Uh, and so I'm a solopreneur with a team of contractors, some of whom have been with me for many years, and we're very. I think there's 4 or 5 of us all together,
Yeah.
and we work together like a team. They have other things that they do because I just don't have enough to keep them completely busy, right? So I want them to be able to do more. But I teach my employees how to hire and have employees and teams and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And do you have you gone through a situation where you've ever needed to raise sort of funds for your business, or have you always been self-funded and been able to sort of provide for everything based on your revenue?
I've never gone through like investors. No, I have helped a couple of my clients with the preliminaries of finding investors. There are a lot of downsides to having investors in your business. Um, and I've had friends come up against those downsides and had to watch them actually lose their businesses because of decisions they made about investing. So I know I'm not an expert. So will send my clients out if that they insist. But I also spend a lot of time talking about the possibility, like what could happen if they do it this way. What could happen, and what are some other ways that you can grow your business without taking on investors, without giving away your company, without putting yourself in a position where somebody could take your company if you don't meet the very often strenuous numbers that they require in the amount of time that they require.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, and I think it depends on what the business is too. I
Yes.
mean, at the end of the day, if you're building a product that is a physical product, a lot of times, the difference between being able to build that product and not is being able to find people to invest. Now, who the right people are to invest with and how you structure those deals, the devil's always in the details of those. But I certainly can say that I personally have been on the sides of having difficulty with investors, but I've also been on sides with having great experience with investors. I think it just has to be the right situation. But I think the cautionary tale you discussed is certainly one that everyone should pay close attention to.
You have to be careful, but I will say, what it's annoying. It's more than annoying. Annoying isn't strong enough of a word, and how little people are willing to invest in businesses that are owned by women. Same businesses that are owned by men get so much more attention. They have access to accelerator money. They have access to incubators. They have access to angels that just won't even take a look if you don't have the right body parts or whatever. And that is really frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about this statistic a lot. So in 2022, less than 2% of all venture capital money was invested in a female founded business in the United States. And that was actually down from 2021. So we are definitely trending in the wrong direction. So I certainly am working to help try to solve for that gap. But it's certainly a very jarring number when you actually really look at the statistics. That is, yeah, I'm not even sure what the strong word is to use, but it is not a. It's jaw dropping, I guess is how I would describe it. Especially like knowing how far we've come to know that that is such a, I mean, that's a more than 98% of money is going to men. Just seems nuts to me.
And it isn't that there are that 98% of the businesses in this country are owned by men. Like that's not correlated at all. In Portland, about I don't know 5 years ago, there was a woman here who had a lot of experience with investment, and she was working really hard to create investor kind of an investor fund specifically for women. She was helping women entrepreneurs be funded, and she was doing such a great job. And then she passed away suddenly. And since that happened, like there hasn't been any real movement. It certainly not in Portland, in that arena, because she was such a powerhouse, and it's kind of like there's a void now.
Well, I'm proud to say that where I'm based in Michigan, we do have some very strong support for women funding women, which is a great initiative. And there are certainly different VC funds that have come up that are founded by women, that are funding women, which is great. My and I think that as women, our desire at the end of the day is we do really want to help and support each other, even though sometimes there is some competition that can rear its ugly head. But I think we do want to support each other. Where we need to be sort of bridging the gap, though, is that the bulk of the funds are not founded by women. And so we do need to sort of figure out how we bridge the gap to do more education in these larger funds, to make sure that women are getting the same opportunity as men. I would also say just one more statistic, though, that I think could be part of the reason why a lot of women aren't. I think it could be both the cart and the horse, which is that 80% of women owned businesses have fewer than 5 employees. 40% of women owned businesses are solopreneurs. So when you look at those statistics and then you compare them to other business owners, there's also a big divide there. And you wonder, okay, is that because the women aren't getting the funding so they can't grow to the same level? Or is it the fact that women are sort of held back by some of the things we talked about earlier, which is the fact that they're giving things away. They're not really have the same mindset of growth and creating those businesses. So I think between the work that you're doing and the work that I'm doing, hopefully we'll continue to help make those numbers look better into the future. And the last topic I want to talk about is, so you bought a van, you outfitted it to sort of do this van life, and you just got back from an incredible trip.
Yeah. So in 2018, after obsessing for 2 years, we bought a spinner. And it was a little bit converted when we bought it. There was a bed frame and there was a bank of cabinets, and we thought, okay, let's go out and play in it and see how we're actually going to use it, and then we'll design it. And so then the pandemic happened, and we designed it. Pandemic happened. We were postponed for a little bit, but my oldest son's best friend is a contractor. And so my husband did a lot of the work, but with Heath's help, they built this whole thing out. We had a cabinet maker actually make the cabinet so that they would, because Heath wouldn't do it. He's like, no, I'm not doing the cabinet. So, and now every summer we go for anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. We just got back from a 5-week road trip in Canada, in BC and Alberta. 2 of us. We are not small humans, so 2 big humans and 2 50-ish pound dogs in 80 square feet for 5 weeks. And we had such a good time. BC is Canada is so underrated. Like, we were shocked at how few Americans we actually saw. It is stunningly beautiful everywhere you go, from the middle of Alberta, which is like Banff and Jasper, over to the West Coast. You wake up like every day is like, there's nowhere you can look that isn't amazingly gorgeous. And I can't believe we're home. I'll tell you, the one benefit of being home is that I can walk from my bed to the bathroom without having to get dressed. The one real benefit, and that I know when my next shower is going to happen. That is also a good benefit. But other than that, living in the van is great.
Well, but long term, you have bigger aspirations. It's not just a weekend trip, right?
Yeah. So my husband is retiring a year from now, and we were originally going to move to Portugal, but that we decided not to do that. So we're going to move to Mexico, but we're taking the van with us. We couldn't take the van to Portugal, but we can take the van with us to Mexico. And we're thinking now that we'll spend the summers up here or in Canada. We're going to split our time between Mexico and Canada and just drive through the States and say hi to the kids and hi, love you, bye, see ya, and go back to Canada. And actually, we were considering perhaps living in the van for a year or two, just all. But I've got I need to be closer to medical personnel. I have a chronic disease, as so many people do, and I need medication on a regular basis that's observed. And so living in the van completely for a couple of years isn't going to work. But I would totally do it. I think we could do it. I think we could do it and be totally happy doing it. But we'll go for a more extended time.
Yeah, I think we talked about this before we got started today. That small of space, it's weird. I grew up sailing and on boats, so you could certainly put me in a boat, and which is probably even less maybe square footage than what you've got in the van. And for whatever reason, I'll be completely happy there. Although I will say we had bathrooms and showers. But for some reason, putting me on land in a vehicle, I think I'd have like claustrophobia issues or something. Not for me. So, Dana, to close out our time together, which frankly I could just keep this going for hours. It's such a delight speaking with you. But there are two last questions that I have for you. One is, I ask every guest this: what is one word or one small phrase that you would give as inspiration to other female entrepreneurs?
I think, honestly, it's not over unless you quit.
I love it.
Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. My dad used to say, it hasn't worked out. If it hasn't worked out yet, it's because it hasn't worked. It's going to work out. And if it isn't worked out, it's just that you're not there yet. Keep going.
I love it. That's such great feedback. The last thing is, where can people find you?
There's two places that you can find me. Come friend me on Facebook, first of all. That's really my neighborhood. It's where I hang out. Just Dana Corey, find me there. Or come to my website, danacorey.com. And there's lots of things, lots of ways that you can reach out to me. You can send me a message. I'm one of those people that in the olden days would be like, I answer my own phone, right? I am actually the person behind the curtain. So if you're going to reach out to me, I will talk to you. I'm a real person. So those are the best ways.
I love it. And certainly Facebook is a great way to get engaged. And I know that we've been streaming live in the StartHer Facebook group. So thank you for joining us today on StartHer. It's been a pleasure bringing you the uniquely inspiring stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I've been your host, Elizabeth Godey, and on behalf of all of the awe-inspiring women entrepreneurs out there, I encourage you to not only dream big, but to ignite those dreams into action. Remember, every spark to an extraordinary fire. So keep the spark alive, ladies, for today, tomorrow, and the vibrant future behind. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to never miss a spark. Until next time, stay ignited.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you.